Pray that our time together is encouraging to you and that you get a chance to encourage somebody else. Once I heard the preacher, Patrick Mead, who a lot of you have heard before, I heard him tell a story about how he went home to his wife after a full day of work at the office at the church where he worked. And his wife said, well, how did the day go? And he said, well, I didn't get anything done today that I planned on getting done at all. People kept on coming in my office, needing to talk. He's like, I'm trying to save the world here, and people are getting in the way. It's like, the ironic, I'm trying to save the world, but people are in the way. How many of you have heard it said or said yourself, I love God. I love God. I just don't like people. There we go. I love God, I just don't like people. Or you might have heard it said or may have said yourself, I believe in God. I just don't believe in organized religion. Organized religion, that's kind of like that's almost a dirty phrase in our culture. Or I love God, I love Jesus, I just don't want to have anything to do with church. And that's, church has become kind of, in our culture, kind of dimly valued for a variety of reasons. But I think the main reason is that the church is made of people. And people are a mess. And when you get people together, you just make a bigger mess. I mean, we are, me, you, every single one of us, we are a complex mashup of selfishness, of godly idealism, of selfish desires, of godly desires, of pride, of insecurity, we're just this mashup of all that. We have such mixed motivations in so much of what we do, and it is really difficult to like people sometimes. It just really, really is. You get together with a lot of people, and it can be challenging. And so the church is made up of all these people, and that if you get involved with church, you are getting involved with a group of people, and it's going to be messy. And who's got time to deal with people? And in fact, many of you, some of you may be in that spot where, you just kind of come to a point at some point in your life, just like, I am done with church. I'm just done with that stuff. And you'll show up every now and then on Sunday and to kind of connect with God and show everybody, yes, I'm a Christian, so leave me alone. I'm still a Christian. But as far as just really being involved, no, you back away from that, because as soon as I do that, then I'm going to be involved with people. And who has time for that? And I just want you to know, I really empathize and sympathize with that feeling and with that thought. For almost 20 years, I've been involved in some way in church leadership. And few people know the pitfalls of church more than those who work for the church. Okay, you're exposed to all of the downsides as well as the upsides, and so I really get that. Last week, there was a big long Facebook post from a friend who, and I didn't know this until I read the Facebook post, who just announced to everybody that he was quitting ministry. I knew him in college. He has, for the last 15 years, he's got his doctorate, in biblical stuff. He's extremely educated, extremely smart, very talented. And for the last 15 years, he's worked for 2 different prominent churches. And I mean, what you'd think of as very successful in what he does. And he just says, I'm calling it quits. He says, I don't even know what I'm going to do next. But he's been so discouraged because he just found his heart and his beliefs being just not fitting in with church, with being ministry. It's like he had to hold in what he really believed in order to be a minister, and he just wore out with that. And I could sympathize with how easily that kind of thing happened. I mean, supposedly 1,400 preachers every month leave their church. 1,400 every month. That just kind of boggles me. I don't even know how they get a number like that. But obviously, if preachers are leaving the church, is there any wonder why just other people are leaving the church? I mean, there's obviously issues there because the church is made of people. Having acknowledged all that, okay, I want to suggest to you that the messiness, that the difficulty of relating with and dealing with and working with and worshiping with and being with and doing life with people, with believers, and the messiness and difficulty of that is by God's design. Is by God's design. I'm going to try to explain what I mean here in just a second. We're going to look at Colossians. Colossians is a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Colossae. And he said this to the Christians there, the church there. Oh, if I can bring it up. I have my clicker off, so that's not going to do it. There we go. Paul says this. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. I want to suggest, and I really believe this from the core of my being, I don't think you can be that. I don't think you can become like that if your church is perfect. If you have a church that is perfect, I don't think you can learn that sort of patience, that sort of kindness, that sort of compassion toward those who need it. You know, he says, bear with one another. You know, you don't have to bear with people you get along with perfectly. You have to bear with people that are difficult for you to bear with, right? The only way you learn how to forgive people is when there is something that they have done to you that needs forgiveness. There's just no way to learn that humility and that genuine love without having been challenged by difficulty in learning how to genuinely love people through it. You may have heard me say before that I think that marriage can be, when you pursue a deeper and more godly and more united marriage, that it can be one of the most spiritually shaping experiences of your life. And the reason is because if your marriage is going to be good and if it's going to grow and deepen, you are going to have to change. You are going to have to change. If you approach marriage, you say, boy, we've got some problems in our marriage. If my spouse would only do this and this and this and this, and you try to change your spouse, good luck, okay? Have fun with that because it's not going to be good. It's not going to work. But if the primary way you approach your marriage is that I want to do what I need to do to help this be good, to help this be godly. I want to change in the way, whatever change needs to happen, the only one I have control of is me. I want to change in that way to help our relationship be good and deepen. And that really is the only way to have a truly good marriage. And that same kind of idea applies when it comes to your church family. That it is through the conflict, it is through the challenge, it's through the difficulty, it's through all those things that can be negative, that you learn to change, that you learn compassion, that you learn forgiveness, that you learn how to love people who are difficult to love. That's the only way, and that's the way God shapes us into it. You see, for marriage, for church, for everything that we deal with in life, the ultimate purpose is to help us become more like Jesus. And becoming more like Jesus, be able to do what Jesus does in the world. We will, as crazy as it may seem, God knew when God created the church, okay? This wasn't something that, people decided, hey, this would be good if Christians get together. This is something that God did. God created church knowing how dysfunctional we would be, knowing how spiritually immature So many of us would be, and all of us at different times, saw how spiritually immature that we could be. Knowing all of our quirks and weird things and difficulties, He knew it all. And He did it that way anyway. Because it turns out that we will either serve God as a team, or we really won't serve Him at all. It's just the way that God made it, because He designed us to be in relationship. It's the way our lives are all about, and He designed us to grow through relationship. The writer of Hebrews showed us what our meetings are really all about when he said this. He said, "Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." I see three explicit and implicit commands in this little passage, okay? The first one is consider. Give thought to. Think about, ponder, discuss, plan how you can encourage those around you. How you can bless, how you can, and specifically he's talking about believers. Think about and plan, how can I better encourage and bless the other believers in my church family? The other implicit command he gives, really kind of an explicit command, is to meet together. He says, don't give up meeting together. Meet together. Get together. Do this thing, yes. Work with one another. Worship with one another. Do life with one another. Do that. And then the third one that he gives is encourage. In our culture, Sunday morning has become about putting on a show that everybody can go to and leave feeling uplifted, feeling encouraged. We want to put on a show that encourages everybody and uplifts everybody. Now, absolutely, in our meetings together, we want to be encouraged. We want God to teach us something. We want to be moved. We want to be encouraged. We want to worship. We want to be affected. But the funny thing is we are not told to meet together so that we might be encouraged. We are told to meet together so that we might encourage. We are sent together. We are bonded together with a mission to encourage and bless the other believers among us. Church is not a show. Church is the family of God, encouraging one another and then going out into the world to do the work of Jesus by blessing the people around us. One of the things that Jesus gave us to do, we call it the Lord's Supper, we call it communion. Some religious traditions call it Eucharist. They have different names for it. But the Lord's Supper is, as I kind of mentioned last week, was originally part of a meal, a dinner. You gathered around the dinner table. Because they didn't have church buildings, they met in homes. And everybody brought some food, and they gathered around, and the Christians would eat a meal together. And as part of the meal, some point in the time, they would pause, and they would take some bread, they would take some wine, and they would remember Jesus. And they would remember who they were in Jesus and how they were related to one another because of what Jesus had done for them. So it was this around the table event. In our kind of big, our necessary big church adaptations of the Lord's Supper, it's kind of changed from that, right? I mean, for us now, so many times, because we're in such a big group, the Lord's Supper becomes sort of a time where everybody's quiet during the service. It's a kind of a time alone with God, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's great to have some time where you just, reflect and pray to God and just, kind of have that time. Nothing wrong with that at all. But in that adaptation, we have somewhat lost, maybe totally lost, the sense of togetherness, the bondedness that we have through what Jesus has done on the cross for us. If you're not a Christian and you don't really know what the Lord's Supper is about, just simply, this is what it is. in the Lord's Supper, we gather together and we take some bread and we take some wine or some juice, and we remember the body of Jesus. The bread kind of represents Jesus' body that was broken for us on the cross. The juice reminds us of the blood that Jesus shed for us, that He sacrificed for us so that our sins could be washed away, so that we could have that relationship with God. And we take that bread, we take that juice, we remember Jesus, and we remember who we are because of what Jesus has done for us. So, in that spirit, we're going to take the Lord's Supper this morning in just a slightly different way. Here in just a few moments, I'm just going to let us dismiss and let you find a table to stand around. Just go to a table and stand around that table. And there'll be a person there who will just kind of lead your table in the Lord's Supper. And y'all will take the bread and you'll take the juice, and you'll have an opportunity to talk just a little bit about what it means to you. Now, if you're our guest, don't be intimidated by that. You don't have to say anything, okay? You don't have to say a word, and you don't even have to take it if you don't want to. But I want to invite you to. Even if you've never done this, you don't know what it's about, we want you to know that this table is always open to you. Okay? So we're going to do that this morning. If you will, and I want to ask you to do this. If you would, try to go to a table where there's not your extended family or those you are super close to, okay? I want to encourage you to go to a table where there's people that you don't know as well, so that you can be with them and you can take the Lord's Supper with those that maybe you've never really connected with much before. So you're dismissed. Just find a table and gather around it.